No one waited for that. Amid a silent Vatican, a sudden ad began to echo through the millennial marble corridors. The whole world was in suspense. The newly elected Pope Leo XIV had just summoned one of the most controversial cardinals of the 21st century for a secret mission. There was no press conference, no formal explanation, just a closed meeting between His Holiness and Cardinal Sarah in the private chambers of the Apostolic Palace. What was said inside? What would motivate a newly deposed pope to trust something so important to a man who, although respected, carries with him the image of a bastion of conservatism? The Church crosses a fragile phase. The world seems increasingly distant from the sacred, and within the Vatican's own walls, deep divisions threaten the balance of centuries. Something needed to be done, and Pope Leo XIV seems to have made a bold decision. But what is this mission? Why Sarah? And most importantly, what is really at stake? The answer can change not only the direction of the Church, but of faith worldwide. Born in 1945 in the small town of Urus, Guinea, Sarah seemed to an ordinary life in one of the most remote regions of West Africa. But from an early age, something in it caught the eye. An unshakable faith, keen intelligence, and a silence that carried authority. Gradually, his trajectory gained strength. He studied theology in Rome, philosophy in Jerusalem, and soon stood out for his firm posture and irreducible principles. Over the years, he has held important positions within the Roman Curia, being appointed by John Paul II, promoted by Benedict XVI, and curiously, kept under Francis. Even when his opinions hit the progressive direction of the Church, Sarah has always been a dissonant voice, defender of the traditional liturgy, a fierce critic of modern secularism, and a firm opponent of moral relativization, which, according to him, corrupts the heart of the Church. His speeches caused controversy, but also caused reflection. Many saw him as a possible pope, others as a threat to dialogue with the modern world. But now, in 2025, he resurfaces, summoned to a mission that no one still understands completely. A question hangs in the air. What does the Vatican see in Sarah that the world still doesn't understand? Little was known about Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost before the conclave that would turn him to Pope Leo XIV. American, reserved, a brilliant theologian, and a master's degree in Vatican diplomacy, he went unnoticed in the eyes of the world press during the deliberations of the College of Cardinals. But something changed on the last day of the conclave. Internal sources say the choice of his papal name, Leo XIV. It was no coincidence. He wanted to evoke the image of strength, combat, and leadership, characteristics of Pope Leo XIII, one of the great social thinkers of the Church. But there was something else, something he didn't reveal openly yet. From the moment of his coronation, the new pope has surprised. His speeches spoke of a spiritual restoration, awakening what was asleep, and rekindling the flame of the apostolic mission. He seemed determined to break the impasse that for decades divided the clergy between modernization and tradition. Then came the unexpected, the call of Sarah, not for an official position, not for an honorary title, but for something different, confidential, and possibly dangerous. What is the plan of Leo XIV, and how far is he willing to go to change the fate of the Church? Behind the marble columns and the golden domes of the Vatican, something erodes the foundations of the Church. It is not visible to the ordinary eyes. It does not appear in sermons or processions. But it is there, a silent crisis made of constant divisions, disputes, and losses. The number of faithful falls in Europe. Churches are closed, vocations rare, and secularism takes the space once occupied by faith. Within the Curia itself, there is a cable of war. On the one hand, the progressives wishing to open the Church more to the modern world. On the other, conservatives who want to preserve the doctrine and tradition at any cost. Sexual scandals still echo. Documents leak, finances are investigated, and meanwhile millions of Catholics watch from afar, not knowing who to trust. Pope Leo XIV knows this. He read the reports, heard the cardinals, felt the weight of doubts, and so it decided to act, not with communications or superficial reforms, but with something deeper, more strategic. He needed someone who didn't fear the confrontation, someone who could be fire in the desert. The answer was in Robert Sarah. But why does he? And what should he face? It was a Wednesday morning that the news ran through the Vatican corridors. Cardinal Robert Sarah had been seen discreetly entering the papal rooms without ceremony, without protocol. No official announcement has been made. There were no photos. But inside the Apostolic Palace something happened. Current sources say Pope Leo XIV handed him a sealed, handwritten letter. The content, a direct request: I need you to go where? Faith is dying, and rekindle the fire. Sarah, known for her introspection, was silent for minutes. Then he made a slight sign with his head. Accepted. But the mission did not come with a clear map. There was no route drawn or set schedule. It was a mission of faith, and also at risk. After all, his ideas were not welcome in many circles. He had already been called an extremist, retrograde, enemy of progress. Now he was the chosen one. And the question that all whispered in the corridors was, what would Sarah do with that power? Or rather, what kind of mission could the Church course change, and why did she need to be kept secret? The letter delivered by the Pope contained only a clear track. Go to the heart of the modern world, where faith was erased. It was not a direct order, but a call to a silent type of crusade. The destination? The West, Europe, North America, the old fortresses of the Catholic faith. Robert Sarah understood the message. It was not a matter of converting pagans, but of rekindling the flame into once holy lands, now taken by relativism, individualism, and a sleeping faith. His mission would be spiritual, but deeply strategic, and, in a way, also political. But how to do this without causing shock, without generating violent resistance? How to face laicist governments, hostile media, and even bishops who prefer silence to confrontation? Sarah started planning. He would choose symbolic places where faith was lost, but memory still lives. Places where a firm word could cause something, an awakening. But he knew each step would be observed by critics, allies, and hidden enemies. His mission was seen by some as necessary, for others as a threat to fragile peace within the Church. The cardinal was now more than a religious. He became a messenger, or maybe a spark in a gunpowder. Robert Sarah's mission was not long to bother. Even before reaching their first destination, internal groups began to move. Influential cardinals, journalists aligned with progressivism, and even diplomatic sectors reacted with restlessness. Not officially, but behind the scenes, everything boiled. Sarah was seen as a Trojan horse, a symbol of the hard church that many thought outdated. There were discreet meetings between ambassadors and high clerics. Messages were exchanged. Some bishops, veiled, began to criticize what they called setback disguised as a rebirth. But the threats went beyond the ecclesiastical. In certain European countries, Sarah's presence was received with protests. Activists spoke on the streets, politicians issued reports of repudiation, and headlines implied that the Vatican was promoting a return to darkness. Even inside the Swiss Guard, rumors arose that their safety should be reinforced. But Sarah didn't retreat. He knew that messing with sleeping structures always generated pain. His gaze remained serene. The goal was greater than the discomfort of some. What few knew, however, was that he had also been warned. There are strengths that do not want you to fulfill this mission, and they are closer than you think. The first stop was Paris, not by chance. The French capital, cradle of the Enlightenment and symbol of European secularization, was also the land where centuries ago the Catholic faith shaped kings, artists, and thinkers. Sarah celebrated a Latin Mass at Saint-Denis Cathedral in front of a silent and attentive crowd. There were no modern songs, no conciliatory discourses, just silence, reverence, and tears. From there he went to Colony, Germany, then New York. In each city, the pattern was repeated. Crowded churches, emotional faithful, but also protests, fierce headlines and heated debates. He spoke of sin, redemption, sacrifice, words forgotten by many modern pulpits. In Nigeria, his speech against syncretism and moral weakening caused intense reactions. In London, he was called the 21st century inquisitor. But there was something new emerging, a curious youth, young priests interested in tradition, faithful seeking, something deeper than empty slogans. Sarah was not a politician. He was a prophet, and like every prophet, his presence divided. Wherever he went, he left restless and hope. But in the Vatican, tensions grew. Some powerful figures saw their popularity as a risk, others as a direct threat to the papal throne. Robert Sarah's journey had only begun. However, the first steps already caused intense reactions inside and outside the church. His deep and uncomfortable speeches began to circulate through social networks, generating heated debates. Some called him the last guardian of faith, others an obstacle to progress. In discreet churches in Paris, Colony, Chicago, and Nairobi, faithful began to reappear. Curious young people approached, seeking more solid answers than the empty promises of the modern world. In each celebration, Sarah invoked a call to conversion, and this call, though subtle, was beginning to echo. But the winds were not just favorable. Progressive groups within the Curia observed with discomfort. The cardinal had become a powerful presence, even without official position. His prestige grew, and that worried. In the Vatican, whispered began to emerge. Would Sarah planting the seeds of a new stream? Was Leo XIV betting too loud? The truth is that the mission was far from reaching its peak. These were just the first steps of a long, uncertain, and dangerous journey. The Renaissance was still a promise, division, a real threat. And as the world watched, a question began to graduate, silent but inevitable. How far can this path take? There is something deeply symbolic in the figure of Robert Sarah, walking along almost empty cathedrals, rekindling candles that had been erased for decades. Its mission, still wrapped in shadows, is not just a return to the past. It is a bold attempt to rescue the sacred in a saturated world of noise. Pope Leo XIV seems to know that the time of neutrality is over. He chose a cardinal with firm convictions, unshakable courage, and above all, faith. But it also launched a spark on a gunpowder barrel, because deep down, this mission is not just about liturgy or doctrine, it is about the spiritual destiny of Western civilization. The question that hangs now is not if Robert Sarah will be able to fulfill his mission, but yes, is the world prepared to hear it, and you? Are you ready to see faith, to confront the spirit of time, to question what is right, even when the world says the opposite? Perhaps we are living the first chapters of something much larger than we imagine. Leave your opinion in the comments. Can this mission save the church or share the faithful? Even more, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because this story is just starting.